Hey everybody, I am going to guarantee you an awesome time today because we are talking to Courtney Williamson from AbiliLife. I've known Courtney for a long time. I'm watching her grow what I think is one of Pittsburgh's most awesome companies. And I think she's one of Pittsburgh's most awesome entrepreneurs and just all around good people as far as that goes. And of course, I'm Jonathan Kirsting here hanging out with Comcast to bring you our summer of 50 PGH tech stories. When I was putting this whole series together, I knew I had to talk to Courtney because she's just so smart on so many levels. Every time I talk to her, she kind of blows my mind in like a new and important way. So Courtney, thanks for hanging out with me today. I'm just so pumped to talk to you. So glad you're here with me.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing introduction.
I try
Thank
my
you.
best. I try my best.
I live up to it.
Very cool. Very cool. So hopefully we don't hear too much of the gardener outside of my house right now who's doing some nice tree trimming or something, because that's the joys of working from home and using Zoom and everything like
I
that. So
have
how's Zoom been treating you working
it's
from home
been
the past
it's been
16?
pretty good. I have a neighbor with two huge dogs that just like roam her backyard, and
Okay.
like you can hear their dogs in my house. So I've gotten used to that like lovely, tone of a huge dog barking every time a squirrel walks by.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm a millennial, so technology is like a love language for
It's
millennials.
your thing, man. It's
So
your
I
thing.
am pretty pumped. I have to say it's been pretty seamless. I think
Okay.
moving from being in an office to now, I think going on 4 or 5 months of not being in an office.
Exactly. Isn't that weird to say that? It's like, what?
It's our new norm. I mean,
Yep.
it's going to be like this for a while, at least another year. I
Is that what
suspect.
you think? Yeah. I trust your suspicions,
Yeah.
man. I trust your suspicions. Until there's a vaccine or something like that, right? Where it's like,
I don't know. Yeah. At this point, I just keep my mask on. That's really, washing my hands, and just being mindful of that. But yeah, and not going places that give me unnecessary potential
yeah,
exposure, and
right.
also treating myself like I might have it and I might give it to somebody. I think
Exactly.
that
Exactly.
helps me to remember, the importance of, wearing your mask, washing your hands, getting in and out of places, and just being a little more cautious than we normally are.
That's some good advice, and I'm glad you keep reiterating that because we should all be thinking that way. I agree, 100%, 100%. So before we start our conversation off, people need to know your background. You've got a really cool background, and the company you built is pretty amazing because it was inspired by your mother. And
Mhm.
you're helping so many people right now, and I just think it's so cool. So give us a little background on that.
Sure. So again, Courtney Williamson. I'm the founder and CEO of AbiliLife. We are based in Pittsburgh, in the North Side neighborhood, and we are a medical device company. And what we do is create products to improve quality of life and posture for Parkinson's disease patients and patients that have postural instability. So what happened to me was that my mom had Parkinson's disease for 25 years. And before she passed away, one of the things that was very difficult for her was her posture. She was constantly like stooped over and hunching over to the point where sometimes her face would be like in her lap.
Oh my
And it was
gosh!
just a
Wow.
function of the disease. And at the
Right.
time, I didn't know that. I just kind of thought it was like something that was maybe idiosyncratic to her. But I did a lot of research and found that 70 to 90% of the 10 million Parkinson's patients worldwide have this problem. And then when you start to look at people with osteoporosis and spinal stenosis and kyphosis, like our back health and our spine health is so important. And there are a lot of diseases that unfortunately attack that.
Right.
So at the time, I was at Carnegie Mellon studying to get a PhD in organizational behavior and theory, which I really, really loved, and was preparing to be a business school professor. But
Yeah. So
yeah,
you thought, right?
right, exactly. She had this big problem. And so at the time I was like, well, Carnegie Mellon has so many engineers, like maybe I can find an engineer to help me create something for her.
Yeah.
I got hooked up with Project Olympus, which is Carnegie Mellon's sort of startup incubator. Basically, it's a program where if you're a student, faculty, or staff, you can go to them and say, I have this really cool idea. I think it might be a company Can you help me get started? At the time, I just wanted to go there to find out how I can get linked up with engineers.
Right.
And I
Okay.
really
You're like, I need an engineer to
no,
make an appointment. Right.
yeah, I had no idea that it was a company, but as a prerequisite, they made me do like a 1 or 2 pager about like what this market could be. And then that's when I started realizing that it wasn't just her. So the first thing I did was called the National Parkinson's Foundation, and they were like, well, we know what this problem is, but we don't have any solution to offer you. So then that's when I was like, okay, I really do think I need to create something, if not for just for my mom. And what happened was, this is like in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I worked on it like nearly every day, just little by little. I did get linked up with an engineering team, and I just kept on saying, you know what, at any moment, this could be something that's disproved, or like, this isn't something that you
Right.
should
Yeah,
do. Or
exactly. Yeah.
maybe something's already out there. I was always constantly looking for this product. I didn't even really know what it was, but like something to help, a solution.
Right.
Or maybe I was looking for a neurologist to tell me this is a dumb idea, or it's not scientifically sound, or a physical therapist. And the contrary happened. Every time I would talk to a PT or a primary care physician or someone, they would say, like, not only do I think this is a good idea, but I want to use it for other patients.
Wow.
So I
You're
was
getting like validated along the way, thinking you're going to get
exactly.
shot down. And people are saying, no, this is actually pretty cool, Courtney.
Right. And so I ended up, long story short, founding the company in 2014. I was a part of Alpha Lab Gear, which is an amazing accelerator, local accelerator that at the time, I think they were like the only hardware accelerator in the nation, and made like huge strides, because making things, physical things, is very hard, as our nation is learning the hard way.
Yeah, exactly.
When
Oh,
you
my.
can't just pull, ventilators, out of the back of your pocket. Like, someone has to make them.
Yeah.
And in order for someone to make them, you have to have an assembly line set up, and procedures in
Supply
place,
chains, all that kind of fun stuff, right?
which apparently America did not have. And that's why we had a big panic in the beginning of, last quarter. So yeah, so I ended up building the Calibrace Plus back brace, which is patented, with a pulley tensioning system that really lifts your shoulders up and back and gives you support across your entire torso.
So
So we are reimbursed by Medicare and private insurance. We're selling nationwide. We're starting to look into how to sell internationally, which is a whole
nice.
other sort of, can of worms. But
You'll figure it out though, because you always figure it out.
yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, that's the biggest thing about this season that we're all in now, is that you have to figure it out. Once the rubber hits the road, like, you just have to go. And so for me, it was like that passion for wanting to help my mom and people like her. And so I have no background in hardware startups, entrepreneurship, medical
Right.
devices,
Oh
none
my
of
God.
that at all. But I had to teach myself and learn along the way to
Right.
make sure that, I was building a quality product.
That's why I think your story is so cool, because you were inspired by this thing and you found the solutions along the way, and you're all back with data. And I don't know, I just think it's so awesome. And every time I talk to you, you always tell me something new and exciting has happened.
Mhm.
Making progress, and even despite all the crazy COVID pandemic stuff, you're
Yeah,
still making progress, which I just love
very much
seeing.
so.
So cool,
Mhm.
so cool. Such good work here. Only in Pittsburgh you can link these things together. So you go to
Yeah,
CMU and
very much so. Pittsburgh is really an interesting ecosystem. I travel all around the nation, or I used to, before we kind of got shut down. And I've met so many different people. And
mhm,
Pittsburgh is incredibly unique, and just the talent and the people that you can bring together to make something happen. And I
yeah,
think that's why a lot of companies are starting to look towards Pittsburgh to
right,
bring offices, and even to bring some of our talent to their facilities, because they know that you're not going to just get somebody who thinks one way. That person most likely will have been exposed to, and maybe even led, processes and projects
mhm.
that touch on many, many disciplines. And so I think that just makes for very robust and diverse thinking. And then at the end of the day, it just helps you make a better product, and then your customer's happy, which is essentially what business is about.
Very cool stuff. Very cool stuff. So switching gears a little bit, part of the whole reason why we are doing our summer of 50 Pittsburgh tech stories with Comcast is because, as and this has been something that's been apparent for a long time, but many of us have not had our eyes fully open to just how big of an issue this is that COVID really brought to mind the fact that the digital divide is not getting any closer this day and age. And we've just seen how wide it is when we're seeing so many folks being left behind with technology right now. And it became apparent when we saw so many Pittsburgh public school students that just didn't have the laptops and the equipment so they could continue to learn. And we were freaking out. And we actually, through a bunch of weird connections, we ended up working with Neighborhood Allies to help raise a bunch of money to help get some of these laptops over. But it's just this much in a thing that's this big. And so we're trying. And so I know that you've got some great insight on ways that we could just really make a bigger impact, not just in Pittsburgh, but I think around the world, because we're seeing this everywhere. So just kind of throwing it out there for you, Courtney. Help us solve this problem. We need your brains on this.
I think so. If you actually, I don't have the statistic, but I know that adult illiteracy is a large problem here in America, which means basically that you're an adult, but you do not know how to read, or your reading comprehension is not where it should be.
Should be, right.
And I actually, at Carnegie Mellon, my minor was education. So I learned a lot in a group that I was a part of, an education group that I was a part of, about adult illiteracy and how it happens and why it happens, right? And how these people are absolutely brilliant, because what they've done is they've managed to work throughout school in their adult lives without being able to read, but they compensate and use other tools and techniques.
Wow.
But the problem is they still don't know how to read, right? And so when you have a child and you are an illiterate adult, and your child comes to you with homework help, needing homework help, you really can't be of help.
Exactly.
Right? And so we have households where both parents, or one parent or a guardian, is literate, and it's quite easy to help. And then you have households where that's just not the case. Right. I think we're seeing that with the digital divide.
Okay.
I think there's a digital illiteracy that's rampant in our society, particularly when you think of poor and or minority communities.
Definitely.
Where the cash is not there to get the latest and greatest technology. I mean, if you look at an iPhone, the second you buy an iPhone, 2 days later they have another version, it feels like, right? And so it's just like, and it's this constant consumption society that we're in. And so it's overwhelming to feel like I can't afford an $800 iPhone, so I can't have one, right?
Right.
And so what happens is you're missing the ability to normalize going on a web browser and typing in a URL and getting to a location, right?
Something simple as that, literally, right? Yeah.
Correct. So there's a digital illiteracy divide. What is a website? What is a URL? How do you search for something, right? So when you look at the problem that we're facing now is that, obviously schools were shut down. And so everyone's like, well, just get online. But for many households, it's not that simple. What does getting online mean? Right? And the tricky part about it is that most of the adults in America have experienced some sort of web interface. Even if they don't own the device, they've experienced something that was web or app related, but it doesn't mean that they're literate. It doesn't mean that they can lead their child through a class online.
Right.
So I think that that's like one problem, is like this assumption that everybody has access, and that's coming from a very like privileged perspective. In terms of helping, I mean, I think it's very clear that the government has money, because if they didn't, then there would be no way that they could be giving PPP loans to the Lakers, right?
Very good point. Yes, exactly.
So we clearly have access to funds, right? Diverting some of those funds to students, if you're going to make them learn in this hybrid or whatever we're going to do for the fall, and giving some of those funds, I think it has to start from the top. Unfortunately, there's so much of a divide right now that it's so difficult to get anything passed, any legislation. But I think that one of the things that I'm saddened by, but also happy that it's happening, is seeing how abused our education system has been, and how truly defunded and underfunded it has been for decades. And now it's coming and it's just falling in our laps. And it is scary and sad because the people who are truly the victims are the children
Yeah.
and the students. But it was bound to happen because there's no reason why we shouldn't have laptop carts in every public school that children can sign out a laptop and take it home.
Something as simple as that, like literally just making sure that there are carts that are full of
Correct.
laptops that are current, ready to go, safe.
Correct.
And you need that to go home. There's your laptop. Like,
Correct. There's so much technology out there. There's so many companies that could do that and that could do that heavy lift of getting all those laptops and being the vendor for the nation's public school to be able to do. I mean, like,
right. It almost feels like we need like a groundswell from the grassroots up saying Microsoft, whoever that is, step up and make these things available.
Correct. And so then now you're saying, okay, the government might not do it or they'll go too slowly. What about these huge organizations?
Yeah.
Right? Like, wouldn't it be cool? I think Jeff Bezos' wealth increased, like $26 billion since pandemic.
Exactly.
Wouldn't it be like awesome if he just decided to like send every child a laptop?
Yeah. And he could do that. I mean, you could, the cash is there. Is there no computers though?
The cash is there, right?
Right.
And so to me, I think a lot of this is coming down to people are used to having access to technology, to wealth, to whatever, but they don't necessarily believe or expect everyone to have access to that. So there is just this inherent unequal approach. But the problem is, and that was fine because you could kind of ignore the holes in the system as so long as the system was working the way it should, right? You could ignore it. It wasn't fully working, but you could ignore it. Now that you have students who literally cannot do their lessons,
can't ignore it anymore. I mean, this has literally made it to where this cannot be ignored. Something has to be done.
Something has to be done. I mean, and I love that Comcast is sponsoring this. And I know that there have been a lot of initiatives that Comcast has done to give like basic internet to families. And I think that's phenomenal. And I just encourage Comcast leadership and board to find their vendors and their other peer companies and say, you need to step up to the plate and do more. Because like literally I don't think people understand when these children grow up, they will be our leaders.
Exactly. That's, to me, it's like, this is
so why
in our future right here for all of us.
You have to invest in that. If you believe in investing in the money in the stock market and in CDs and Roth IRAs for the future, think of a child as a stock. Right? Like, if that's the only way you can think in numbers, fine, then do that. I think it's just obscene. So I think that these private companies need to step up to the plate. Our government certainly needs to step up to the plate. We need to stop burdening our teachers and educators. It is not their responsibility to fix a system that is broken and unfair to them as well. Because the problem is that so many teachers for many, many, many years have been buying supplies and also personal items for their students because there's just a need and there's just not enough.
See, that's always blown my mind. I've always like, wow, like, because I've been out of school for so long, I can't even remember. But when you see these stories about the fact, like, literally there's not enough money for basic school supplies like paper and glue and sparkles and the stuff that you need to have a classroom. It's just like, this is just it's, I don't know, the values are screwed up somewhere, because that funding should be available, and that funding should make sure that there are carts full of laptops, so that way kids have access to the internet, and that part of the curriculum is showing kids how to use the technology. And I don't know, like, to me, it's just, it blows my mind. And if for as awful as it is, I'm glad at least now is that it feels like, for the time being, and I hope it's not just for the time being, but at least what I hope it has started now is us having more conversations and raising more awareness around this, because we can't stop talking about it. We got to keep this going, because that will maybe get the Jeff Bezos of the world to be like, no, actually, I think I should donate $1 billion to the laptops. I think I can do that and it'll be okay, So
Yeah.
that's why I'm just so happy to have your insight on this, because you know what you're talking about, Courtney. You know you're talking about lots of stuff, and when the point you're bringing up now, like you just make it so real. The idea that like these kids were stocks, like you know, we need to invest. We need to
Yeah.
invest in these kids because they're our
Now
future. At the
have
end of
to.
the day, I mean, it sounds so lame to say they're our future, of course they are, but yes, like literally they are our future. Like we both want to retire one day, right, Courtney? We need kids being gainfully employed to do that.
Yeah, you need them to do that. They're going to be running, public offices. They will be teachers themselves.
Right.
They will be building companies themselves, and they're going to remember this time. And
Right.
this is going to shape their future. So I would love for them to be shaped in a way that's hopeful, and that they felt like, I needed something and people stepped up for me.
Definitely. And the other part that I get concerned about is I feel like not seeing a child reach his or her full potential like really freaks me out, because I see so many kids, are just so freaking smart, but they're not going to get the opportunity to fully like use their smartness, because they're going to be
Yeah,
cornered into something, or they won't get the opportunity because they couldn't get online to get to it, or something like that, and not to oversimplify, but I think that's just another huge issue too, is the fact that we need the smartest people everywhere come and
everywhere.
help us. Yeah, I don't want anyone not being able to come and help us. And I think I'm seeing that too much. And that's why it's just like, oh, it's so daunting to me.
Hmm. I think that one of the things, though, is for me, when I think about huge problems, it does become, of course, overwhelming, but then start thinking about like what you can do
Yeah.
at a little level. So like I had already decided I wanted to donate a laptop or two to a student that I knew.
Okay.
Because for me, I'm not Jeff Bezos, so I can't, or any,
You're not Jeff Bezos yet.
yet.
I'm giving you time though,
Right.
Courtney.
Right. But like, I can ask in my network, what student needs something, right? Like needs a laptop or whatever, and I can provide that.
Right.
I think that's important. So yeah, it's important to not get overwhelmed, because then what happens is you don't do anything, and it's actually
And nothing happens, right?
right, where you just like, you get so paralyzed, you don't do anything because you think that other people are going to do something, and other people's help is bigger than yours, and you shouldn't even try.
Right.
Please avoid that, because that's actually not true. If I give a laptop to a child who's like, I really need one, that might be the difference between them getting on the honor roll like they should have, or like completely falling behind. And to
Exactly.
me, that's worth it. It's not every child in America, but it's that one child, and you're sowing a seed into somebody is very important.
I like it. I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think sometimes, yeah, we all get a little paralyzed thinking, well, I can't do anything. It's like, no, you absolutely can. It's called working on the edges, right? It's
Right.
doing what you can do within your sphere of influence to be
Mm-hmm.
positive and to be helpful. And if you can do that, then that's helping to row the boat forward, one little rope
Right.
at a time. So
Mm-hmm.
it is something that if we all get that mindset, we can maybe start seeing some really big changes. And that to me is
Correct.
key. I hope that happens in my lifetime. I really want to see that happen as
Yeah.
far as that goes. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, Courtney, what inspired you as a kid to go to CMU and to just be so analytical about everything? And you bring this awesome mindset to like solve problems and stuff like that. Are you just born that way? Did something inspire you to be that way? Like,
I think it was a combination of what I grew up around
hmm?
and my education. So my dad is an entrepreneur, and he's been since I can remember. I think now going on probably 50 years. And so I just remember one of my favorite things, childhood memories, is like driving to a restaurant after going to church, and like he would be talking to an associate,
Okay.
and he had like a cell phone, a car phone, and for the people who are younger,
Oh
like,
yeah.
I'm like 32, but which is people think it's young, but like there was a moment in life where cars had like phones
Oh,
in
I
them.
had one. I had one
And
back in the day. It was beautiful. Yeah.
it had like a little, it was like a corded phone
Mhm.
in your car, and like, but that was advanced. Like if you had that was like very advanced. So but I remember like him talking on the phone and just like listening. I had no idea what he was talking about, but I just remember that people were making business deals or like talking about solutions. So that was always really cool. And yeah, I mean, I had a great education, went to private school my whole life, originally from Baltimore. And then one of the best decisions was going to Spelman College, which is a historically Black college
Mhm.
in Atlanta. And just the amount of Black women there who were like phenomenal,
Yeah.
and just constantly pushing me to want to do better. So I think that's sort of where, and I had phenomenal teachers who always believed in me and just encouraged me. So that was, I think, for me, where I was like, I can do anything that I kind of set my mind to, including going to get this PhD straight out of undergrad and then pivoting to being a med device entrepreneur. So for me, it's always been just the people I've been around.
Right. Well, I'm glad your journey brought you to Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon University. That's why I always say I sleep better at night knowing there's Carnegie Mellon and Pitt and all of our universities,
Yeah.
because they attract people like you to come here, and then you do something pretty rad like start your own business and solve tough problems, and you stay here. Ha ha ha. I think that's awesome. I absolutely love it. So the other thing we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about was you had some interest in exploring more on the areas of, like, how children now are going to be using more distance learning and so forth. I mean, obviously, if they do have the laptops, which they should have,
Yeah.
the fact that they're going to be learning more, I mean, do you think that's going to be something that we're going to be seeing? Obviously, that might become more of the new norm and so forth.
I think it's going to not just be at the grade level, but I definitely think it's going to be at the collegiate level as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and it's interesting because I was having this debate like years ago with someone about the university sort of setup and the processes and procedures.
Yeah.
And I just was like, I don't know if the way that we're teaching college students is sustainable, given how quickly technology is making the world flatter and smaller.
Right, right.
And so they said, well, you'll never see that change in your lifetime. And I'm like, yeah, we are, because listen, it's the whole system is not going to be thrown out overnight. But if you look at access to education, because that's what we're talking about, it's access. It's not, is the student smart, or are they worthy, whatever. It is, do you have the ability
Mhm.
to learn? And if you look at the history of our college system and of PhD programs, et cetera, if you look like way back, like, a couple of centuries ago, how it was built was either wealthy, sort of like people who were nobles back in England, who turned into merchants, or wealthy merchants who had the means to send their sons to get education.
And you said
And
sons back
education,
in the day too.
right, yeah, exactly. Education didn't necessarily at that time translate to money,
Exactly.
because there weren't any white collar jobs, right? Like either you were lifting things and pushing things or making things, or you were paying somebody else to do that. But
Right.
they're really, I mean, you could be a lawyer, but they're really, like, the amount of white collar jobs that we have now did not exist, primarily because the technology that we have now did not exist, right?
Good point.
So you look at that. So you have to start there first. Now, fast forward to now, we have a lot of students funneling through our 4-year education programs, but they can't afford college. Even if they could pay for it, they can't afford it. What
Right.
does afford mean? It means that I can pay my student loans and it not be a burden for the rest of my life. That is not the case for many students.
It's pretty frightening when you see people with loads of debt with kind of very boring degrees that aren't going to get you a pretty good paying job.
Correct. Right. So like you are paying to get this degree that is actually not going to end up having the job that you get. You really can't sustainably pay your loans back. Like student loan debt is the reason why a lot of people in my age group cannot buy homes.
Exactly right. Yep.
Like that's just some people in my age group are not having children, or as many as they want to.
Because the loans, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
There are people who I know, families who have started families of their own, and they're paying for their student loan debt while also gathering funds for their child to go to school.
Oh my goodness. Like,
He,
yeah, it starts
by
stacking
the
back.
time their kids in school, they still have debt from their education.
Yep.
And now their child is starting a life of debt,
Yep.
right? It's
Exactly.
the access. So I think that when we think about education and being online, now it's an interesting thing because we've proven you can learn online. Now, it's been a horrible experience for a lot of people I've heard at all levels, teachers
Mhm.
from grade school on up, but it's possible. And I think that some really great companies going to come along, either they're already in existence or they're going to be formed to make this better.
Yep.
And once we figure that out, why can't I learn about entrepreneurship from Oprah?
Here you go. I can't think of a better teacher there.
Why, right? You know what I mean? Like, what's stopping me from doing that?
And should dramatically bring the cost down as well too. So you should
And
get
then you
more
start to do a
access to the cost.
subscription model. So it's a SaaS payment. It is not the payment for the brand of the college.
Right, exactly. And the
And
idea that we all have to be lifelong learners in this day and
right.
age. The fact that skills are changing. So you might be into something for 10 years, but have to change that skill set. So you can go for a month and take some classes, get those skills, and throw yourself into crazy loads of debt. So you
And
can
that's the other thing too, is like going back to trades. I know Pittsburgh's really by default a trade heavy place.
absolutely, yeah.
That's how it started, right? Going back to that. Like, I only want to know credits and courses for things that'll help me make money now.
Exactly.
I don't want to wait 4 years and
Exactly.
then a year on the job market. Like, I'm not going to do that. And people can say that and they have alternatives. So I think, I mean, is
Yeah,
Harvard going to disintegrate? No. But the people who go to Harvard are going to shift. It might not be, and especially now when we're looking at immigration laws and just like
oh yeah.
what's going on, a lot of students are going to say, "Do I need to go?"
Right. No, it's lots is going to change very quickly, I do believe. And you
Mhm.
raised some awesome points, Corey. That's why I could talk to you for hours because you got so much going on, man. I just love.
Likewise, you
Yeah,
always have the best questions.
I'm just so glad that we got this little time to talk because I just think everyone needs to know who you are and what you're doing. And I'm just proud to say that you're in Pittsburgh doing what you're doing because that's what's
Thank
one of these great
you.
stories that's making Pittsburgh really the town that I want it to be. And I want more of this happening. And I think you could be a huge inspiration to so many people out there, Courtney. I know you inspire me a lot because I'm like, man, she can figure it out. I can figure it out too, hopefully. Probably not as fast, but I love it. Thanks for being part of our stories today. And so glad
Thank
Comcast can help
you.
us out and make this all possible. So, and like I said, just keep doing what you're doing, Courtney. You are making Pittsburgh
Thank
proud.
you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.